You are the best advocate for your child. You know your child the best. Don't let any professional ever tell you that they know your kid better than you do and what's best for your kid.
ADHD rewired, episode 406. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHD-rewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. All right. I literally just forgot how I start the podcast.
You can always say, welcome to ADHD rewired.
Wait, what do I say? Oh my gosh.
And we're back for another live Q&A. We're recording this on November 9th. And by the time everybody hears this, it'll be December. So welcome, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
You usually do it in rhyme.
Oh my God, it is so funny. My brain is just going, I know it, but I'm just not going to, I'm only 400 and some episodes into this now.
It's like counterblindness only for your thoughts.
Oh my gosh, it is. So let's welcome everyone first. And then we have questions coming in. All right. Well, you heard MJ who saved me there a little bit because my brain just decided to switch off for a moment. Hi, MJ. How you doing?
All of my executive function is now gone.
and Moira Maven, how you doing?
I'm doing quite well. How's my volume now?
It sounds amazing.
Excellent. Canada says hello.
Hello, hello. Will Curb, how you doing?
Doing pretty well. Glad to be
Are
here.
you feeling blue?
Always.
His hair is dyed. What is it? Electric blue?
It just said blue on the package.
Just blue. It's great. It's great. I love it. And we got Brendan Mahan. How you doing, Brendan?
I'm having 3 Thanksgivings this month, so I'm great.
That is fantastic. And I love Thanksgiving because it's all food and no religion.
Word.
Hi, Roxie Martin.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm good. I'm in transition mode. I'm still adjusting to being back home. We got home late last night from the conference and glad to be here today.
Awesome. And Barb McDonough. How you doing, Barb?
Doing all right. Hello, everybody.
Barb's going to be helping us screen those questions. And let's get into it. Let's start with Liz, who has a question. So we just got Liz unmuted there.
So it's my first attendance on one of these Q&A, but I've been listening to all of them. In a nutshell, I was diagnosed probably 10 years ago, but nobody ever explained what this diagnosis meant to me. And I kind of stumbled upon that in September on a neuroscience podcast, and have, of course, been doing a deep dive since then, which is where I found all of you. I started looking into resources, and then I fell and fractured my knee and tore my ACL. So now my ADHD is kind of heightened because of all that's going on. My executive function's getting exhausted. I don't have the tools in place yet, and I can't get outside and exercise, which is, I know, a number one thing for you that you guys talk about a lot. So I was wondering if you might have any tips for me for the coming couple of months, because I'll be having surgery and inside quite a bit.
All right. So we said it's your ACL.
Mm-hmm.
So basically the lower half is not doing great.
Yeah, not great.
Okay. What can you do with your upper half?
Probably anything, really. I can't do anything that would need me, like, I can't do a plank or a push-up or anything like that.
Okay. Can you carry groceries?
Well, it's also fractured, so I'm not supposed to be putting a lot of weight on the leg.
Okay. And I was just thinking of like what things that we can do like while sitting. Right? I mean, using like chair yoga, we can do things with our arms. Even like, do you have access to a pool?
I don't have access to a pool, and I won't be able to get to a pool after the surgery because I won't be able to drive.
Okay. What about those like therapy bands, those like big rubber bands?
I have one of those for my PT. Should I look up upper body stuff with that, you think?
Yeah, I think that there are always ways that we can get our heart rate up using what we have access to. I've had issues before where I throw my back out. I've had issues with my leg, and I think this is kind of we can almost look at this as a microcosm of, okay, so I can't do this, but what can I do? Right. And so I think it's whether we're looking at a physical injury or, a challenge that we have with our executive function, right? It's like, I can't remember the thing that you just told me, but what can I do so I can retain it, so I can capture it? So I think it's a lot of this is sort of looking at how do we ask ourselves those questions and sort of identify what it is that we can do. And by the way, congratulations on starting to really look into this now, because educating yourself on ADHD is one of the first really critical, important steps. And ADHD is something that learning about it absolutely helps manage this condition.
Thank you. I do want to mention actually, so I am in my early 50s, so it's been a roller coaster ride finding out what this diagnosis meant. And I didn't have any of the tools in place when I fell. So,
Moira?
So I had to have back surgery last year, and that was because I fell off a cliff just over 3 years ago.
Goodness.
And so I had to recover from a brain injury, and I had just recovered from that when my back was like, no, you're not fully healed. So I had to learn how to walk again. And I too have been a very active person. This experience can highlight tendencies that we have. Like a tendency that I had was to just push harder and work harder, and I couldn't anymore. And I heard you mention that, this is making your executive function struggle. So I really had to find different ways to take care of myself. And I don't know if you heard at the beginning that when I could barely walk and I could barely think, I would go for walks and I'd listen to the podcasts. One of the best things that I just kicked myself for not doing it earlier was finding a physiotherapist post-surgery who was almost like a Pilates instructor, because she has taught me how to hold my body differently. And pain that I've had my entire life, I'm not getting anymore.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so if you haven't checked out my podcast, I would encourage you to, because I talk a lot about this, because a lot of it is about how we're handling it in our head and the expectations that we're setting up for ourselves. I'm still really limited. I'm recovered physically from the surgery, but I haven't really started to regain my physical strength. And so, this is a year later from the surgery.
Okay. I will look at your podcast because a lot of the things you just touched upon really hit home with what's going on right now. So I appreciate you sharing that with me.
And I wish you the best. And you know what? Even having gone through this, I like the me I am now more than the me I was 3 years ago. And I would wish that for you too.
Thank you.
Check out Moira's podcast. There's a lot of good resources there. All right, let's go to another question.
We have a question from Brenda that when she first started Weight Watchers, she was doing really well. But as the weeks go by, her new shiny habits fall off one by one. And she wants to know if you have some advice to help her stay on the program and making progress on her weight loss.
All right. Roxie.
I was looking at this question, and the thing that came to mind first was, what's your why? And my suggestion or thought around this is, the more compelling the why, the more likely you are to stick with it. And it also ties to like recovery programs when they want you to go into great detail in your first step about like, what was it like? When you're thinking about all the things that you want to do, all the reasons for why you want to lose the weight, the more detailed and specific, the more that you can create these images that are almost like so clear that you can almost touch them.
Visceral.
Beyond, like literally, tactile is the wrong word, but like make it so that it's so real you literally feel like you could touch the image, and if that's helpful, some people like to literally, take pictures, but not just like pictures in a hot, swimsuit bod, but like all the things that it really means to you beyond just the loss of the weight. Another thought is to argue your reasoning to future you. So like act like an attorney right now and lay out your case with as much detail as you possibly can so that when future you's like, why am I doing this? I just need a burger and some donuts and a nap. Then you've got this thing that's like, hey, I got you. And then read through it and remind yourself. Those are my initial thoughts on that.
Cool. Well,
This is a very hard thing to do. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. So along with that is to try and slow it down. We have a tendency to want to go all in and create these very unsustainable habits that like, I'm going to just completely change my diet and without any systems to make sure that keeps happening. So it's slowing things down, going, okay, I'm not going to get to a different set of habits overnight here. So doing very small incremental changes and then think about more of what you want to add into your diet and less about what you want to take out. It is very, very hard to have negative habits, like things that just go away from your life completely. But if you're going, oh, I'm just going to eat more vegetables at breakfast and lunch, that's a much easier habit to do. And it will have cascading effects of, oh, if I'm doing this, well, then I can't eat as much of this other crap that I'm not as hungry for those 3 Oreos now. I'm not saying that just adding a salad is going to make you want to be healthy. I know you're still going to have all these other things, which is why go slow, see what you can add.
Yeah, and there's also like data that shows the slower you lose the weight, the more likely it's going to stay off.
I'm sorry. Will said vegetables at breakfast and my whole brain seized up and I'm having trouble creating thoughts right now. Like they go in omelets and that's about the only vegetable at breakfast concept I have.
At least in the US. I remember when I was over in Israel and like they had this whole buffet of vegetables for breakfast. I was like, what? Like, where's the eggs and carbs? And
I might have had spaghetti for breakfast this morning, by the way.
Nice.
Dinner for breakfast is really good for us with ADHD protein.
It is. I had chicken and corn soup for breakfast last week. I ate great that day. I ate really healthy. I didn't overeat. Like I did a good job. And I'm like Captain COVID 30 pounds guy. Like that's where I am. I'm trying to get rid of that because there's not a lot of place. There's not much space for 30 pounds on my 5'6" torso. But when I've been successful in the past, and these are habits I'm trying to recreate, it started with the supermarket. Slowly, like to Will's point, but slowly I had fewer boxes and more like vegetables and fruits and things in my basket. My basket went from cardboard to greenery. The other thing that helped me at the time that I'm trying to get back to, which goes to the head game stuff, is I was listening to podcasts and information about the gut biome and like the benefits of having a healthy gut biome. And I ended up like personifying my gut biome. This is going to sound so weird. Like I would eat and I would think like how happy I was making the microorganisms in my gut biome by eating like nuts and salad and that kind of stuff.
I love that.
Like half of that stuff I can't eat anymore because I have food allergies, but still that as an approach to be like, I wasn't really being excited for future me or loving future me. I was literally loving my gut biome and I was like imagining these little cartoon things that were like, yay, green vegetables.
That's awesome. So, I want to share that. So this year, one of my goals for the year was I wanted to lose a bunch of weight. I had like put on the COVID-19, maybe plus a few. So since January 1st, I've taken off 25 pounds. I got stuck at losing 10 pounds. And it was for a couple of months, just wasn't budging. And so I had part of my goals, like if that continues to be the same, then consider Noom. And I considered it for a number of months. And then I finally signed up for it. So, Noom is not, they sponsor a lot of podcasts. They aren't sponsoring this one. I've really liked Noom and I found it to be really, really helpful. A couple of the things that I personally have found helpful about Noom is just the act of tracking your meals and learning. Like one of the things I loved about it is that like there's no food that is off limits. So like I have lost weight while occasionally having like a brownie or going out on a Friday night and having like a bacon cheeseburger and a beer. And I continue to lose weight. One of the things that helped me is food choice and the idea that like of caloric density, foods that have more water in it have more caloric or lower in caloric density, which actually fills you up more. Now I went like 120 some meals in a row tracking. And last week I actually made a conscious decision to break the streak because I was sort of having this little bit of just not annoyance with it, but I was feeling some resistance to it. And I'm like, no, I'm doing really well. I want to see how I do if I don't track as carefully. So for me, I really want to emphasize that for me, one of the keystone habits around weight loss has really always been getting on scale. Now, and I want to say I have a big caveat for this. I know for a number of people, that's not healthy for sort of mental health. For me, I just look at it as a data point. If getting on the scale on a daily basis is causing distress, because I know there's a lot of leading nutrition and diet experts that will say, like, throw your scale away. For me, it's a easy feedback tool to see kind of how I'm doing. I want to just add to Brendan's point too, like it starts in the grocery store. And that could even be easier if you don't go to the grocery store and you use like a grocery delivery service, because then you literally can't make impulse buys. So kind of thinking about what are the things that you look forward to. You want to make it fun and just go slow. Will, you have one more comment on this?
I could have like a bunch more, but Brendan's gut microbiome reminded me that, yeah, success is based on making sure you feel better. And so that means that this is a lot more complex than just the calories in, calories out. That's absolutely what's going to lead to weight loss, but that's not going to lead to sustainability all the time, because it's about what makes you feel good so that you keep doing things that make you feel good. And to also just be really conscious of all the mental stuff, look into some of the intuitive eating things where it's like, hey, why am I feeling the need to eat this food right now? Am I feeling hungry right now? With ADHD, we have really terrible interoception. We don't know when we're hungry. We don't know when we're thirsty. And that can make it really hard to keep on with good habits.
I've also mentioned a number of times on the podcast by the battle that I often will have with my kitchen pantry in the evening. It's often a battle between me and some kind of carb, and I often don't win. And one of the things I love about Noom is that if I'm being careful during the day, and being careful doesn't mean easy. Like I used to put a bunch of nuts in my oatmeal. I now just cut them out mostly, but now I'm actually sort of adding a little bit of them back, but not every day. And I used to put a whole avocado in my salad. I now put a quarter of an avocado. I'm still totally satisfied. So playing with those kinds of things and finding what works for you. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we have some more questions to answer. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD reWired comes from our alumni coaching community and our award-winning video-based coaching and accountability groups. This week, we're finishing off our last week of our fall coaching season, which means we're less than a month away from starting our new season, our 27th season of coaching groups, and just over 2 weeks away from the beginning of 2022. Early congratulations to all of our season 26 graduates. You're in the home stretch, and we hope you really discovered that you really can do hard things. We had our final registration event last week, and after last week's event, all 4 sessions, all 48 spots of our winter season has been filled. Moira, Roxie, Barb, and I would like to thank all of you who joined us for our registration events. Really, thank you for signing up and for how many of you didn't wait till the last minute. For real, you rock, and we can't wait to see you in the next year. If you didn't have a chance to join us and secure your spot for our winter season, but are still interested in joining, you can still show your interest by going to coachingrewired.com. We're starting a new interest list for our spring sessions for our coaching groups. When you join our coaching groups, support continues beyond the 10-week program. We have a whole coaching community just for our alumni with coaching and peer support sessions every week. Here at ADHD reWired, we believe in growth through community. There really is no reason that we should have to face our ADHD challenges alone. If you want to begin your journey with a group and a community of amazing people who also understand what it's like to live with ADHD, we'd love to have you join us. Go to coachingrewired.com and click on the big button at the top of the page. Then add your name to our spring interest list and keep an eye out in your email so you can stay up to date for our upcoming registration events. Again, thank you so much to everyone who joined us for our winter registration events. And if you still want to join us, go check the website. You have a wait list going. You'll find more information there. Go to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. Support for ADHD rewired comes from Adult Study Hall. ADHD rewired's a virtual co-working membership community. Adult Study Hall is the place where adults with ADHD from all over the world can get together and harness the power of real-time accountability that's shame-free and judgment-free. It really is the ADHD-friendly co-working community just for adults with ADHD, for people just like me and you. Membership to the Adult Study Hall community is only $19.99 a month, and it's free for the first week. Your membership includes our themed and guided sessions, including a session for writing and one for job searches led by a coach and HR specialist, and one for tasks that you've been putting off. We have 2 a week for exercise and 2 a week for decluttering sessions. Then this Thursday, December 16th, I am hosting my monthly Pomodoro dance party. But this one, we're going to do it a little differently. Instead of 25-minute work sessions and a 5-minute dance break, we're going to do 2 50-minute work sessions over 2 hours. That means instead of the usual 5-minute dance break, we'll get our dance moves on for 10 minutes. So 2 50-minute work blocks and 2 10-minute blocks of dancing. Let's get that heart rate up and let's get the dopamine flowing to the brain. You think you can dance for 10 minutes straight? Find out by joining me this Thursday by going to adultstudyhall.com. When you join the Adult Study Hall membership community, you'll gain access to all of our guided sessions, also known as ASH Plus sessions, our monthly Pomodoro dance parties, and our 24/7 drop-in room called ASH 24/7. And remember, you can try it completely free for a week. If you don't like it, cancel it. If you do, it's only $19.99 a month. Whether you are looking for real-time accountability in our 24/7 drop-in room or for guided facilitated sessions with more structure to start tackling your toughest to-dos on your list, then come on in. It really is a place where adults with ADHD brains can get together, work together, and where we can belong. If you're currently a member of Adult Study Hall, join us on Wednesday, December 15th at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 Eastern for a collaborative brainstorming session. I'm going to be introducing some ideas I would like to roll out in Adult Study Hall, but I want your feedback and your ideas. So come work with us. Go to adultstudyhall.com. That's adultstudyhall.com. All right, and we are back, and we have a question from Ryan.
Hey, could I take a moment to express my appreciation?
Sure.
So I found, I think my first podcast was Hacking Your ADHD earlier this summer, and I've started picking up all of the other podcasts, and they have been absolutely phenomenal. I've enjoyed each and every one. I've been a weekly listener. Every time y'all send out a podcast, I listen to it. So just wanted to say thank you so much, first of all, for all of the ADHD help you've been putting out into the world. It's very much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thanks for saying that. Much appreciated. And we all appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
So my question is, I have 2 daughters. My oldest one she's 2.5 now. And both my wife and I have ADHD, and we recognize those same symptoms, I guess, in her. And I guess just kind of looking ahead, and I'm a little bit sensitive to this because I was diagnosed as an adult, finished college without knowing that I had ADHD. So I guess maybe I'm overcompensating, but I'm just trying to get as much help for my daughter so she doesn't have to experience all the things that I have and the struggles that I had with ADHD. She's too young for a diagnosis, I'm sure. But just looking at what resources, where can we get start exploring, or maybe habits we can start building now when she's young, not having that confirmed, but just knowing that it's a pretty good possibility.
All right. So my first thought on this is, while the things that we see from our own kids that we see from ourselves that we struggle with are like just hard to see, and your kids are not you. They are their own unique people. And I'm going to tell you, my son, who is neurodivergent with ADHD and autism, and he's highly gifted, he's 10 years old. And, when he was 2.5, if you told me that where we'd be today with him at 10 years old, I would be like, I mean, that's a best case scenario, but like, we'll see what happens. It's development's a funny thing, right? Sometimes it's like, all right, seriously, when is this? Like, none of their peers are doing this and they're still doing, and then things just kind of start to connect. Taking care of and continuing to sort of work on your own ADHD. I think one of the most important things we do as parents for our kids when we also have ADHD and they have ADHD is be mindful of shame, right? Because I think that when we inadvertently shame our kids. I mean, it's really hard. There's this, I don't know who to attribute the quote to, but this idea of like your kid is not giving you a hard time, they are having a hard time, right? And just keep remembering that when they're, when they're pushing your buttons, right? I mean, they know exactly where your buttons are that they can push because they're made of them, right? So just take bits and pieces at a time and try to stay out of the worst case scenario thinking. Because I mean, this is advice I know I need to remind myself of often. So, Brendan?
Yeah. So this is the first stuff. The first things we talk about in the parent groups are we want to assume good intentions. We want to assume best effort. We want to assume that our kids are trying to please us, right? They're trying to do it the right way. And if they are not doing it the right way, but we have those assumptions, it changes what our guesses become. Because it's easy to go, oh, my kid must be disrespectful. My kid must not care or whatever. My kid's a jerk as they get older, not at 2.5. Although I've heard parents do this at 2.5. If instead we're assuming those good intentions, we're assuming the best effort, then it becomes, well, why aren't they successful? The answer is more often than not, oh, there's probably a skill that's missing. There's probably some skill set that just hasn't developed yet, hasn't been taught yet, hasn't shown up for whatever reason. And now it's, okay, well, let's teach that skill set. And in doing that, we want to avoid the shame. We want to avoid the guilt. We want to bring compassion, 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 compassion. I feel like I'm doing an advertisement for the parent coaching groups because like the best thing you can do is come sign up. And I'm not lying when I say that. That said, you want to focus on connection, communication throughout the family, you and your wife communicating well and connecting well, and as well as with your kid, and anxiety management. The more you can keep the overall anxiety in the home lower, the better things are going to be because you're going to have fewer spikes. And anxiety management means both ADHD management and anxiety management. And good communication and solid compassion strategies and connection strategies will help manage that anxiety.
Thanks, Brendan. Will?
To piggyback off of Brendan, start also looking at the motivation of what your kid did rather than the outcomes. Because if you go, oh, you're making bad decisions, they don't know. They're motivated to draw with my crayons. They drew on the wall. Okay. Their motivation was to draw, not to cause you a problem. Yeah. It's very easy to see some of these behaviors in 2.5-year-old. I definitely, when my daughter was 2.5, I was like, yeah, she probably has ADHD. That did turn out to be the case. And it's one of the biggest interventions for ADHD in kids is how the parent does things. How you react to your kids, how you help them deal with it. So the first thing to look at is what can you do to help your parenting to help your kid? Because that's going to be what doctors look for before medication or anything else.
I know when I had my clinical practice and worked with kids with ADHD, I was working with the parents of the kids with ADHD. And when parents were like thinking they were just going to come to my office and drop their kid off, I was like, nope, that is not how this works. You can actually leave your kid at home if you want to. Like, this is actually about parenting, right? You're not going to get it perfect. There's always a really good opportunities for also modeling how to own when you make mistakes. Moira?
I'll be brief. There's so much, I mean, this could be a whole episode, but Eric, what you said, modeling repairing, like that's one of the things that owning my mistakes with my kids, starting when they're really young, talking about, I have the kind of brain that other people have the kind of brain that. Will made me think of, so I really struggle with impulse control. Roxie experienced it with opening the trunk of the car. We had a rental car and we were just standing there and all of a sudden my finger shot out and pressed a button and it opened the trunk. And my nickname in my family is Fingers. And that had shame for me as a kid that I had to learn, but it's not shameful for my children that we call each other Fingers. Knowing that we have that tendency, we can talk about it, that we might be in a situation or we might want to do something, like when I go in a store and I want to touch everything and they're the same. And so it becomes a shared trait that we don't have shame around and we're working on it together. But the most important thing is to do what you can do to not lose your mind.
Also, make sure you're an advocate for your kid, because ADHD is something that often doesn't get diagnosed unless you're a problem for other people. And that can make it really hard when, if you have a smart kid or they're not struggling, you don't want to wait till crisis to have them get help.
Thank you for saying that.
So make sure you're advocating and following through with their appointments, because it's so important that they actually get the help before they need it.
Because no one is going to have their back more than mom and dad, right? I mean, that's just kind of how it is. Ryan, hope that was helpful for you.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate the input a lot.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Good luck.
Next question comes from Kirsten. She's wondering if you have any advice on whether or not to disclose diagnosis at the workplace. She worries about judgment. She says that everything that's asked of her, it's a very ADHD unfriendly way. And everybody constantly interrupts her during her workday as well.
Well, Kirsten, if you go back and listen to, I think it was just episode 399 that I did with Kat Hoyer, we actually talk a lot about this. You know, as a general rule, I say don't disclose ADHD. Do disclose what you need to be successful. Because whatever it is that you need to do your job to the best that you can benefits not just you, but your company, right? So you got to find those win-wins. So if that means you're able to, even if it's just putting on noise canceling headphones so you can concentrate, or if you can reserve a conference room so you can work quietly, not have people bother you. You know, I used to have I remember in a job I had a while back, my boss, anytime she would like just see me in passing, she would like tell me 5 things I needed to do. And there was 0% chance of remembering any of them. I met with her about that. And I said, hey, you know, I want to make sure that I'm not forgetting stuff. So could you either email it to me, or can you wait till I'm like at your office or I have something to write down? Because if I don't have anything to write it down with, like there's a really good chance like I'm going to forget all the things you just told me. Right. So kind of figuring out what it is that you need and then asking for it. And then I think once you do that, if they're not responsive to that, then yeah, it might be time to explore potentially other job opportunities. Brendan?
Jessica McCabe was on the latest episode of the show. It was a debrief on the conference, and she was talking about a resource that I think was called Ask Jan, that had like workplace accommodations, and you can go there and like ask and get information for free, like one-on-one sort of messaging back and forth stuff. So that's a thing to look at. And I might be wrong, so feel free to check out that episode.
It sounds right. No, it does sound right.
It's like within the first 10 minutes she talks about it.
And every time I hear about that resource, I'm always like, oh, I totally forgot about that resource. Yeah.
That was the first time I had heard about it. So I'm glad I got it right.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it is like, I wish that we would be able to live in a society where you can just say you have ADHD and people would understand it, but we don't live there yet. Right? Like we're doing things, you know, to build that society. But we're not there yet. And so imagine every like unhelpful, false, preconceived notion that might be out there about ADHD and assume that's what somebody's going to think when you disclose at the workplace. So best of luck with that. I mean, that's tough. You know, I think that having a good fit for a work environment is just so critically important. All right, looks like we have another question coming up from Sedona. Let's get Sedona unmuted here.
Hello.
Hi, Sedona.
Hi, Sedona.
Sedona, thank you, Sedona.
Oh, Sedona.
It's all good. It's all
like
good.
Madonna, but Sedona.
Correct, with an S because I'm way smarter.
Nice. What's your question?
I am just learning and realizing lately that I have ADHD, and so learning new tasks and figuring out how to, you know, organize my home to make it more friendly for myself. And so I was just kind of wondering, what are all of your guys' best home hacks?
Roxie, you wanted to kick it off?
Very excited by this question. Hi, Sedona.
Hello.
So the first one isn't really a hack, but it was a realization, and I find it really helpful. And that is that cleaning and decluttering are not the same thing. So for me, I thought that they were, and I ended up doing big cleaning projects and burning out. Something about recognizing that decluttering is its own thing and that I don't have to do the deep cleaning on this at the same time has made it easier, more doable for me. That's one thing. The other one is I struggle with motivation. So one of the things that I do is if I'm unmotivated is I'll take a picture of a room that needs some work. And sometimes just having that objectivity of being able to look at the picture will help me to kind of get inspired. I can see more clearly what needs to be done. It helps with my prioritization. And then using those pictures for accountability. So telling somebody that I'm going to I'm heading into the bathroom to do some work. Here's the first picture. And my ego's like, well, we're not leaving it here. And then I'll send the update pictures, and that can keep me on track. And then the last one is a printable checklist. And that's me outsourcing my working memory and being able to just grab a list and let it tell me what to do. So those are some of mine that I find helpful.
Those are great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I got a couple here. So while I did not do this weekend, I did like every ounce of laundry that I have, which I have 2 baskets still sitting in my room needing to be put away, which is why one of the things that I do that work well for me is I try to do a maximum of 1 load of laundry a day, because I can get that done. As soon as I get like more than 1 load, like some of it ends up not getting put away. And then I'm like, wait, which was the dirty basket? And then I'm rewashing stuff. Another one is having cleaning supplies everywhere where you need them, not just having one area where you have cleaning supplies. So I have stuff to clean the toilets, the mirrors, like in every bathroom, because it's one of my favorite things to do is to clean the sink, toilet, or mirror while the shower's getting hot, because it's like engineering urgency. I have about a minute and a half to do this, and like it just seems easy. The other one, and I do recognize that not everyone is able to do this, but having a cleaning service. I have a cleaning person that comes every other week, and I really do look at that as an accommodation, because like I can totally clean my house, but it takes me like a really, really, really long time, because I'll spend hours cleaning a bathroom, and that's not the best use of my time. Brendan, what do you got?
A few things. One, Eric mentioned baskets. Baskets are a great way to keep the clutter contained. It's basically piles in a basket, only it's not all over the counter. It's like in a spot, right? So those are awesome. Also, I like to listen to music or a podcast that helps me get going and doing stuff. And another thing, this is when I usually do it with my kids, but it would help me maybe too, where I take a clipboard with a T-chart on it. And all it does is it says on task, off task. Those are your 2 columns. Then you set a timer to go off every 15 minutes. And all you do is put a check mark on whether you're on task or off task with whatever you're supposed to be doing, because it makes you want to be on task when the alarm goes off. That's really the whole purpose of it. But it's good. And as long as you're being honest with yourself and you don't like lie to your own clipboard, it'll help you stay focused and keep going, and you'll find you get stuff done faster.
Oh, that's an interesting concept. I think I'm going to try that.
One other one, and I know it's a little bit tricky right now still because of COVID, invite people over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Accountability.
Love that.
Oh my God, because it's like all the stuff that you just haven't even been seeing suddenly like pops back up into your visibility when you're like, oh, so-and-so is going to be seeing this. Here we go. Let's clean. MJ.
Yep. Pre-COVID, nothing could get us to clean faster than having company. So that worked. That doesn't work now, unfortunately. But +1 to everything that everybody said. And yeah, just kind of gamifying it. I live in an ADHD household. I'm ADHD. My partner is ADHD. Cleaning is really hard sometimes. And so what we've done is sort of split some of the things that we clean, things that we like cleaning versus things that we don't like cleaning. I like filling the dishwasher. I don't like putting away dishes because I'm short. So that doesn't work for me. And so we split up little things like that. That's like somebody puts away, somebody loads a dishwasher, somebody does this, somebody does that. And that makes it easy for us to just sort of know what we're going to do.
So Donna, we also have our adult study hall membership program. And twice a week, we have a guided and facilitated session that's 2 hours long. That's called Clean and Declutter with me. So that's also another option, the idea of using a body double. Brendan and then Will, and then let's see if we can take a quick break so we can get into some more questions.
Also, MJ alluded to this, but I would be remiss if I let us go any deeper into this episode without saying, remember that we're living through a global pandemic, and that some of the reason it's hard to keep your house in control and in check and cleaned and however you want to look at it is exactly because we're living through a global pandemic and our executive functions are taxed more than they were 2-3 years ago. And also, when you're not having people come over as much, that motivation and that even interest in keeping your house clean and tidy is diminished, because kind of who cares? Like, that's there too. And it's okay if the standard is a little lower than it used to be. I know my friends are coming over and they see like the coats on the floor and they don't really care because their house is the same way.
Right? People aren't coming to see our coats on hangers. They're coming to see us.
Right.
Right. Will?
All right. I had two things. I remember one of them, so we'll see if I can get to the second thing. So the first was to piggyback off those bins and stuff. The more discreet of a location you can have for something to go, the better it is, because, you know, shoes go in the shoe closet. Well, then that kind of can go and start coming out of the closet a little bit and just be, they're on the floor by the closet. If you have like a bin in the shoe closet for shoes to go into, then you go, okay, the shoes aren't put away if they aren't in there. And that makes it a lot easier to follow through with these things. Same thing, figured out my second thing, is because we need to see something to remember it, we will, you know, leave some of a project out so that we can get to it. And then eventually we don't ever do it and it just becomes background clutter. Instead of leaving projects out to do, make it a specific thing on your to-do list. You know, it doesn't have to be out if you have a trusted system to follow up with it. The reason we don't do it is because we're like, oh, I'm not going to do this if I don't see it. But we don't do it anyway. So we need to actually make it a real project and to do that we can have some way to follow up on.
That's a good one.
I'm always amazed what I can actually clean in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's like, even if you're looking at a big mess, like try 5 minutes, see what you can do. All right, let's take a quick break and let's see how much time we have left when we come back. So we will be right back. It's the second Tuesday of the month, so if you're listening to this before 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, on Tuesday, December 14th, join all of us here on the ADHD reWired Podcast Network for our monthly live Q&A. You can register for this and upcoming Q&As at ADHD-rewired.com/events. While you're there, if you haven't yet checked out the other podcasts here on the ADHD reWired Podcast Network, go to ADHD-rewired.com/podcast network and check them out. And if you find value in the show, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends and family and therapist or coach or anyone else who you think would benefit from listening. And if you really love this show, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any podcast player that accepts reviews, like Cleo0404, who wrote on Apple Podcasts. Fantastic. Thank you, Eric, for such a wonderful podcast and program. My husband joined one of your coaching groups and it changed his relationship with himself and his ADHD and with me for the better. I am so thankful for your program and for this podcast. Thank you so much for that review. We have hundreds of reviews, but we do need them to keep coming in so this podcast continues to stay relevant and show up at the top of the charts when people search for ADHD. So again, a huge thank you from all of us at the ADHD reWired podcast family for checking out our shows, sharing our shows, and being a part of our growing community. You are not alone. And for listeners who have been with me from the very beginning back in 2014, it has been a wild ride. I am so looking forward to wrapping up this year and can't wait to bring you more episodes and content in the new year. Thank you for listening. I know right now there are some of you listening who really wish I would just get on with these ads so you can listen to the actual episode. You can get access to ad-free episodes of this show when you become a patron at ADHD-rewired.com/Patreon for only $5 a month, which is just about $1 an episode. I want to thank Amy S. and Yengi C. for going to ADHD-rewired.com/Patreon and becoming a patron this week. So let's talk perks. $5 a month gets you ad-free episodes. $10 a month will get you a bonus audio track every month on that very same podcast feed. And what is that bonus audio track? Well, you get to listen in on an actual coaching call that we have every fourth Tuesday of the month for our $25 a month patrons. I host a coaching session on Zoom and we drop the audio recording of that coaching session right into that ad-free podcast feed. But since it is December and it's the holiday season, we will be holding off on this month's Patreon coaching call, which means our next patron-only coaching call will be on Thursday, January 25th. Perks for our patrons start at just $5 a month of ad-free episodes, months, but you can support us at any amount that suits you. No matter your contribution, I am grateful for any contribution you are able to give if you're able to give. I really do appreciate all of our listeners who have joined us in our Patreon community. And if right now isn't the right time for you, our Patreon community will still be there when it is. So thank you to all of our patrons, new and old, for supporting this show. I hope you know how much I really appreciate all of you. And if you love this show, the community, and you learn something new about your own ADHD each week, consider supporting us over at ADHD-rewired.com/Patreon. Become a member and find perks starting at just $5 a month. And support can start at any amount. That's ADHD-rewired.com/Patreon. And thank you so much. And we are back. What is our next question, Barb?
The next question is from someone who is not diagnosed yet, and she is going to go in for an evaluation, wondering what she needs to prepare for her evaluation to make sure her symptoms get taken seriously, because she was doing fine in school. She was gifted as a kid. So how can she approach that?
So hopefully you're seeing a good evaluator, because if you are, you don't need to worry so much about preparing. And leading up to it, it might be helpful to have just a bullet pointed list of things that as they pop into your mind, things you want to share with this person. Whenever I go, if I have my annual physical, to avoid the whole, I forgot to bring up this thing the moment I left the office, right? I'll actually put those questions directly in my calendar to make sure that I address those particular issues. So I think it's great that you're thinking about it. I think it's also okay to share that you're concerned that that your issues aren't going to be taken seriously, right? Share the stories you're telling yourself, because it's a common one. A good evaluator asks good questions, and they're going to help you, sort of tell your story to be able to come up with a diagnosis. Moira?
Thank you. So I actually did an episode, I had to look at what number, episode 18, and it's actually called The One About Diagnosis. And it's about increasing your chances of getting an accurate diagnosis, particularly if you're a woman, particularly if you're of higher intelligence. So there's articles on the website as well about, you couldn't possibly have ADHD diagnosis mistakes, and what to know about screening. So that's a place where you could go, where I've tried to gather that sort of information. But the number one thing is exactly what Erica said, the quality of your evaluator. Have they diagnosed many people with ADHD? Have they diagnosed many adult women with ADHD?
And if they say to you, well, you've come this far in life, just remember where the entrance door was and maybe go find it.
And where you are in your cycle, you will present differently in that office. So if you're in the first 2 weeks after your period, you'll have better executive functioning than when you're premenstrually or during your carrying week.
Thanks, Moira.
Same thing when you're trying out medications.
I love when you bring that stuff up. It's such a helpful thing to people to hear. Brendan?
Mine's more of a question than a statement, because I'm not going to pretend that I'm the expert when it comes to women being diagnosed with ADHD. But I have observed that the only people who ever come to me and say, I was diagnosed bipolar and now it's been reassessed and I'm being diagnosed with ADHD, are women. I've never, ever had a man say that to me. And I know I'm kind of tangenting, but this also might be a thing to be aware of when she goes, right? Anybody have any knowledge about what's up with that? Because I haven't done any digging.
I have. It's because primary care providers are much more familiar with mood disorders. That's why we get diagnosed with depression and anxiety first, because they know what that looks like. They don't know what ADHD looks like in adults often, because menopausal transition, perimenopausal symptoms can also look the same. So if a woman presents as stressed and overwhelmed, those are the routes that they go down, because those are the ones that they know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Thanks for the question. What's next?
All right. I think Kristen will go live.
What's up, Kristen?
I was very curious, Eric. I went to your presentation.
And we're talking about the CHAD conference.
I'm sorry, the CHAD conference, yes. I was curious, being a theater person, what do you guys know, if any of you, or have experienced with improv being an impactful practice for a person with ADHD, skill I call them speed bumps, hurdles, walls, and how they might help us get over those and through those.
So addressing this as, can you rephrase the question?
He was doing the practice of improv as some way to help with ADHD. And I am very curious if any of you guys have ever tried that kind of practice and what maybe it does target.
Improv around ADHD. I mean, it's yes and, right? So we're looking at accepting sort of what is and seeing what can we actually do about our situations, right? It's looking at when something unexpected happens, how do we accept that as it is and identify what can we do? How can we sort of problem solve around this? So I think part of what it does is it sort of opens us to more growth mindset kind of thinking. You know, I am a huge fan of improv. It's not just for ADHD, but for life. Like, I think it is such an important skill because life is not a script, right? Like, life is improv. And the more we can adapt to what's thrown at us, the better we're going to do.
So it sounds like gamifying it too makes it more inviting.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that we can make fun is going to be more inviting, right?
Yeah, so that practice should be used in a gamified way.
Well, and I think there's so many explicit skills that are in the context of improv. Even just listening, I mean, you have to fully listen to participate in improv. Like, if you were just sitting there focusing on, all right, what's going to be my line? That's not going to work. So you really have to be listening and hearing and reflecting what is being heard. Otherwise, you're going to miss, you're going to miss the mark in a lot of situations.
So that's the point of doing improv in the theater world, is developing that skill of acting as reacting and learning how to do that. So now I think I understand the tie-in and how they're using it. That's so fun and cool.
Yeah, no, I love that. MJ?
Well, I'm wondering too, and this is just my own curiosity, because I'm very much a verbal processor when it comes to trying to problem solve. And I imagine that a lot of us are verbal processors because I know everybody here on the screen. So I'm wondering if like doing improv or sort of having that practice session is helpful for verbal processors. I just wanted to say that because that's very interesting and just wanted to spark that for others who are listening who also may be verbal processors.
MJ, my reaction to that would be too that the verbal processors, we tend to be blurters, at least in my world. And that would really help us practice that skill of listening.
Just so all the listeners can know, there's a lot of knowing smiles on the screen just now.
Uh-huh.
Brendan?
I just, there's this podcast called ADHD reWired. You might have heard of it. And episodes 27 and 112 both specifically address improv. So
cool.
I've heard it.
I want to listen to those. That sounds cool.
Thanks.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. I think we have time for one more question here.
Hi.
Hi, Barb. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm trying to digest the last question. It's just, there's a lot. And do you want me to give it a shot?
That looks like a novel. So I'm wondering if
I'll read it. I'll do it.
All right.
You're great, Brendan.
Can you do it in your best Will Shatner voice?
No, I can't, because I don't remember what Will Shatner sounds like. Or are you just saying I should do it like I'm a space cadet because he went into space? No.
Oh my God, Brendan.
Didn't he done shit his pants too?
You know, and we also know he is Canadian.
That's true. Yeah. Hi. I have a son who was first diagnosed with hyperactive abnormality when he was 2, but it has never been further looked into because he was healthy, happy, and active, which I thought was normal. Fast forward to age 3 and 4, he's given every babysitter and daycare facility a heart attack. They all get scared because he gets hurt daily, without exaggerating, so that's not good. His daycare used to write daily accident reports and just got tired of it and stopped. I'm a single mom, and I've always just tried doing extra activities with him, outdoor walks in nature where he can touch and run and climb without getting shamed for it, and bike riding. Then at 5, he was diagnosed with ADHD. And when he started kindergarten, he again would get in trouble every day. And I was forced by the school to start medication. His primary care physician, after seeing him for literally 5 to 10 minutes, prescribed him with Adderall, then guanfacine, then Ritalin. Nothing's happened. He's now 6. How can I help him?
Thank you, Brendan.
Sure thing.
All right. Well, it's all the time we have for today's show. No. So,
So mean.
I got to play a little bit here, right? Okay. So first of all, schools cannot.
I'm a little stunned the school somehow forced medication.
Right. You hear the
I'm
same
like,
thing. So
what?
schools are not allowed to force your kid to take medication. That is illegal. I mean, so much so that they're not even supposed to put it on the table as something to consider, which I actually don't necessarily agree with, but that is the law.
Unless this is a different country than the United States,
That's
in which
true.
case maybe, but I don't know.
I know there's some Canadian representation here. Do you guys know anything about that?
Yeah, no, it's not something that we can.
Okay.
We're not doctors.
So when we talk about a trial of medication, it is a trial of medication. And so one of the things that you may want to explore is trying different medications with your doctor if he's not responding well to those. Also finding therapists who specialize in ADHD and finding support groups, because you mentioned that you're a single parent. I mean, and 5 and 6 year olds are exhausting you when they're neurotypical. And right. So making sure you have the support, because you got to make sure you're putting on your oxygen mask first so you can take care of him. And I just love to hear that you're doing all this physical stuff with him. Keep that shit up, right? That's really important to also acknowledge that you are probably doing a lot of things that are actually helping him significantly. It just sounds like he's struggling still, though.
Also, on the topic of support, there's totally scholarships available for the ADHD Essentials parent groups.
Nice.
It's not going to address this specifically, but like sort of around the corner, it might be useful. So feel free to email me if that's something that's useful for you. And also, like this, a lot of this sounds like school stuff to me. This sounds like schools that need better training in how to navigate ADHD and how to better handle kids that are, I don't know, moving and doing things and being kids. That's where my head's going with this.
Yeah, and there was a follow-up question that she asked. I just saw that, what skills can I learn as a parent to help him? Learning as much as you can about ADHD is like the first thing. Then looking at like behavioral modification, looking at like how to just talk to him about the stuff. And, it's a process, but just asking that question shows that you're on the right track. Barb?
Yes, with my son, he's 14 now, but when he was in daycare, they were approaching us about, things they were seeing, just impulsivity and things like that. And what I found helped a lot was to really open up that communication. We had a great daycare, and, what can we do? How can we help? This is what we're doing. That helped a lot. And same with the school as well. Some teachers weren't as open to maybe accommodations as others, but just kept that communication open. If that is helpful at all.
So there's also on the CHADD website, CHADD.org, in their search bar there, put in WWK, which stands for What We Know. The CDC, or the Institute for Mental Health, puts out these What We Know sheets, which is basically I think there's about 20, maybe 5 or so different topics. And I actually love, they've added like the ADHD friendly version and a full version, so that you can either choose the 2-page version or like the 8-page version. And so that's a really kind of good way to sort of start looking at what the science says. Because if you're sort of new in this and learning about it, just be aware that there's a lot of bad information out there. So don't trust everything that it's sort of good to think about with anything online, but don't trust everything you read online. Moira?
So having been on both sides of this, both as an educator and as a parent, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, you are the best advocate for your child. You know your child the best. Don't let any professional ever tell you that they know your kid better than you do and what's best for your kid, because that does happen. So that's one thing. The other thing is, the number one thing for schools is to return your child to you safe. Beyond education is safety. So if there's issues around safety, and I don't know where you live, but where I live, ADHD on its own gets 0 extra educational funding, attention, support. But if there's issues of safety, you as a parent have the right to advocate for your child. And the squeaky wheel is what gets the attention. And unfortunately, that's sometimes what we have to do, but we're so exhausted just trying to get through the day that it makes it really hard to do that. So I just wanted to make sure that it's very easy to question what we're doing and if we should do these things. But if you know in your heart what you want for your child, that those are some things to consider. And lastly, now that my son is a teenager, that energy is changing. And so it won't be like this forever, even though sometimes it feels like it's forever.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for their questions. I actually want to end here by asking you, the listener, a question. Learning as much as we can about ADHD is wonderful, but to really sort of rewire our brain. I mean, we talk about rewiring, we're talking about neuroplasticity. We have the ability to change what we do and how we do it. And that does not come by stopping at learning information. So as we are wrapping up this year, a question for you to think about: what can you do? What do you want to do come 2022 to help rewire your ADHD beyond just learning about it? What are the actions that you want to take that are going to make the biggest difference in the lives of yourself, of your family, of where you work, and your communities? You know, because I think that we are all here working really hard. And from everything that I've seen, I've worked with a lot of people here in our community. Man, can we do hard things? We don't have to do any of this stuff alone. Find your community and connect. So we're going to end it with Will, Mom and Dad.
Yeah. Well, so you were talking at the beginning of the episode, we're November now and it's 9 more weeks. Crazy, because I can't believe that it's almost the end of 2021. It feels like 2020 never ended. And, it's just going to be the same next year because it's going to be 2022.
I like it.
I got it. All right. Will, thank you so much. Check out Will Curb, Hacking Your ADHD, Brenda Mahan, ADHD Essentials, MJ Siemens, ADHD Diversified, Moira Mabin, The ADHD Friendly Lifestyle, and one of these days, Roxie Martin and Will Curb are going to be launching. Wait, what was the question? So thank you everyone for being here, and we will catch you next month. Bye everyone.
Bye everybody.
Bye.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD reWired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHD-rewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD reWired podcast network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHD-rewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHD-rewired.com. If you are a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.